And we're coming to you from the GIS studios this morning. We had the Parliament. We came to you from Parliament yesterday, but we're back in studio. My name is Jessie Leonce. And if you're watching us on air online, a special good morning to you, to residents watching from here in St. Lucia, St. Lucians in the diaspora, and well-wishers globally. We'd like to welcome you this morning as we deliver the latest developments from the government of St. Lucia. And speaking of which, we're going to get right into it. The COVID-19 Prevention and Control Bill replaces legislation associated with the state of emergency. As you know, today is the last day of the state of emergency here in St. Lucia. And there has been legislation to replace what will obtain for the next 2 years here in St. Lucia. Also, the Chamber of Commerce has concluded its second COVID-19 impact survey. We're going to get into the details of that in just a bit. UK carrier TUI Airways to begin its winter weekly direct flights from Gatwick to the Urianor International Airport on November 3rd, 2020. And this is in the week that we are observing World Tourism Day, which was observed on Sunday. But the government of St. Lucia is having a week of activities in observance. So this is really good news as St. Lucia continues to advance in terms of the lifeblood of our economy, which is tourism. Prime Minister Honorable Alan Chastanet responds favorably to the extension of moratoriums from banks for the citizenry. And just to go back to Monday's interview, we did speak to the Bankers Association of St. Lucia for the Financial Information Month, that is October. And we did hear from the Public Relations Officer, also Scotiabank Country Manager, that there will be stipulations for this extension on moratoriums going forward. So we have St. Lucia receiving 2 more ventilators, this time sponsored by the India-UN Development Partnership Fund for the Victoria Respiratory Hospital. So quite a bit happening right now for this 24-hour news cycle. Just going to get into a look back at the parliamentary sitting. Yesterday, we did have, Parliament did open, the House of Assembly opened with statements by 3 ministers, I believe. It was the Physical Planning Minister, Honorable Herod Stanislaus, speaking on the Peter management area concerns that persons had with the development in the area. And it's not new, but it's just for the record of Parliament. He did articulate the position of the ministry earlier in a statement. Also, we did have Minister, the Honorable Guy Joseph, giving an update on the transport system being transferred to DigiGov, the number of patrons they've had so far, customers making use of the system so far. And also we got an update from the Tourism Minister, Honorable Dominic Fady, just giving us an update on the tourism sector as we're entering this responsible phased reopening of the sector. Papers were laid by 5 ministers, statutory instruments. 3 motions were forwarded. The Parliament authorized the Minister for Finance to borrow an additional sum of $5 million by way of credit from the International Development Association for capital expenditure for the health system strengthening project. Also a loan guarantee in the amount of euro 5,750,000 from the European Investment Bank by the St. Lucia Development Bank for on-lending to micro, small and medium-sized enterprises. There were 3 bills, and we did have an interruption to the regular proceedings to have the COVID-19, the Prevention and Control Bill to go through. The Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Alan Chastanet, in his bid for this legislation to be passed, we understand that the state of emergency was revoked, and that was published in the Gazette, an extraordinary Gazette, on Monday, the 28th of September. And to replace it, the government of St. Lucia forwarded this bill yesterday, and it did go through all its stages. And now go to our first clip of the morning of Honorable Chastanet speaking and making his bid for the enactment of this legislation.
The predictions by many of the experts are that we're not going to see any form of solution for the next 2 years. I think it's safe to say, in the environment that we're in today, and within the next year, a pending election, that we would not want to stay, Mr. Speaker, in a state of emergency. So I think that the Attorney General's office has come up with a great alternative. And that alternative, Mr. Speaker, is to create a specific act. And what is that act? That act is simply the accumulation of all of the SIs that we have done. So when persons say they've had no involvement or consultation, we quickly remind them that we've not done anything new. All we've done is taken the SIs in which they consulted and were part of and put them all under one act. And we gave it a life of 2 years. Why did we choose 2 years? Because 2 years is pretty much the consensus of the experts as to how long it may take. Now, the experts may be wrong, and it's going to take less. And if it does, then the Minister of Health can recommend that the act be terminated. But there also might be a possibility, Mr. Speaker, that it may be longer than 2 years, and that we may have to extend it. But the fact is, we cannot stay in a permanent state of emergency, because as members on the opposite side and many members of the civil society would know, that in essence, the state of emergency gives the government much broader powers. Doesn't even have to be for COVID issues. Although I am very proud about the members on this side, that even with that awesome authority, that we have never abused it for 1 minute and have stayed in the context of COVID-19.
The first round of the moratorium, which went for about 6 months, I think in most cases, most persons.
So that clip there from the Prime Minister, Honorable Alan Shastney, in his bid last night for the passing of the COVID-19 Prevention and Control Bill to replace the legislation associated with the state of emergency, which expires effective today, September 30th. We continue just to let you know that the sitting of the Senate, as usual, will be held tomorrow, Thursday, October 1st, 2020, following the House of Assembly proceedings yesterday. We continue with news this morning. The Chamber concluded its second COVID-19 impact survey. The survey was divided into key areas to assess the impact of COVID-19 on business, employment levels, employment decisions, business operations, and perspective on the handling of the pandemic. The Chamber of Commerce says the survey provides valuable indicative information, not just for government policy makers, but business people who are keen on getting a sense of the emerging business and economic environment. The results of the second COVID-19 impact survey are as follows. 28.2% of respondents never stopped operations during the pandemic. 51.3% stopped operations temporarily but are back in operation. 5.1% stopped operating but expected to be back in operation by July. Another 5.1% have stopped operations permanently, and the other 10.3% were hoping that they would be back in operation at some time in the future, dependent on the reopening of the tourism sector. 73% of respondents indicated that they are operating with between 50 and 100% of their normal workforce. 5% are operating with between 20 and 50% of their workforce, and 11% are operating with below 20% of their normal workforce. 11% have sent everyone home. 60% of responding firms have instituted zero redundancies. 23% have made up to 20% of the staff redundant, while only 8% of firms have made between 20 and 50% of their staff redundant. 62% of firms have instituted no salary cuts. 15% have instituted salary cuts of up to 20%, while another 15% have instituted cuts of between 20 and 50%. Only 8% of firms have instituted salary cuts of 50% and above. Between the period July to December, 34% of respondents indicated that they anticipate a decrease of under 20% in their revenues. 41% of respondents indicated that they anticipate a decrease of under 20% in their sales, and 44% of respondents in the survey indicated that they anticipate no changes in their workforce. 92% support the reopening of St. Lucia to tourists. So that's one thing we can be sure of. And speaking of such, we have the UK carrier TUI Airways beginning its winter weekly direct flights from London Gatwick to Uranora International Airport from November 3rd, 2020. Along with 4 British Airways flights, the Tuesday departure increases ease of access from the UK with 5 flights a week. And this comes at a time when St. Lucia has been commended as one of the safest destinations for winter sun due to the recording of the lowest COVID-19 rates in the region. The island has welcomed more than 8,500 visitors since reopening at the beginning of June, with the UK figures growing as confidence increases and airfares are attractively competitive. The TUI flights are available from £400 in November. Entry requirements for the UK arrivals include completion of an online pre-arrival registration form, negative COVID-19 PCR test up to 7 days before the date of travel. A rapid test will not be accepted upon arrival, and nationals and residents must quarantine for 14 days on arrival at a government facility. Visitors must stay at COVID-certified accommodations for the duration of their stay here in St. Lucia. We continue with news quickly before we bring on our interview for the morning. Prime Minister and Minister for Finance Honorable Alan Shastney welcomes the decision by financial institutions to offer an extension on moratoriums to support customers during this ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. In a joint media release by the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, that is ECCB, and the ECCU, the union, dated the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, dated 23 September 2020, the regional institutions noted that although most of member countries are beginning to reopen their borders utilizing a phased approach, the pandemic continues to negatively affect and impact individuals and businesses across the region. The ECCB and the ECCU Bankers Association extension of the current moratorium to as much as 12 months where considered necessary. That will be applied. And speaking of which, we're hearing from the Bankers Association of St. Lucia, and they've so far indicated that any applications for extended moratoriums on credit facilities will be subject to scrutiny. Moratoriums of up to 6 months were initially introduced in St. Lucia as a COVID-19 response to support economically vulnerable persons and businesses. And all banks and other licensed financial institutions offered this deferment in one form or another at the discretion of the customer. A Scotiabank country manager and public relations officer at the Bankers Association of St. Lucia, Mr. Gordon Julien, indicates that going forward, customers will have to convince banks of their specific predicament. We now go to a clip from Mr. Julien.
The first round of the moratorium, which went for about 6 months, I think in most cases, most persons, whether they really needed it or not, they took it. So you had a situation where banks didn't really necessarily vet and say, well, okay, you can afford to pay, you not afford to pay. Once you requested it, for the most part, you got it. The next round of moratorium that's going to be extended, there's expectation that the bank's it's going to be a more rigorous exercise.
There'll be scrutiny.
There'll be more scrutiny. So for example, persons will have to demonstrate that there was actually a loss of income and that kind of thing. There'll be more robust discussions between the banks and the individuals in determining the extent of the moratorium that's going to be granted. You would have now had some funds of money, some pool of funds that you didn't have to pay to the bank. Are you making...
The Bankers Association is appealing to clients to consider the implications of moratoriums on their accounts. It also hopes that customers who opted for a moratorium capitalized on any additional cash flow that they may come into during this relief period.
The most effective use of that cash flow, or are you just squandering it, right? Because it's really to provide liquidity support for the essential things, to put food on the table, to meet medical expenses that you couldn't, for businesses to continue to sustain your business and that type of thing. Really to put it into good use, so that at the end of the day, even if you deferred on your payment, you still made good, wise, sound decisions and good utilization of that additional liquidity that's going to help you in the long run.
The Ministry of Health and Wellness now has 2 additional medical ventilators. That was Mr. Gordon Julien, Public Relations Officer at the Bankers Association of St. Lucia, also country manager at Scotiabank. At the end of June, the extent of liquidity support offered by local banks, financial institutions in St. Lucia in moratoria was valued at $1.5 billion. We're moving along briskly with the Morning Brew today because we do have additional live programming for the morning that we need to prepare for. So now going to a news report, the Ministry of Health and Wellness has received a donation of ventilators from the Carry Secure project. We'll go to the report. The Ministry of Health and Wellness now has 2 additional medical ventilators to better equip the Victoria Respiratory Hospital, which was recently transformed to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. Delivery of the machines was possible through the leadership of the St. Lucia government, the generous financial support of the India-UN Development Partnership Fund, and the backing of the UN Office for South-South Cooperation. In a recent handover ceremony, Minister for Health and Wellness, Senator the Honorable Mary Isaac, showed appreciation for the highly specialized equipment.
As we continue to prepare our respiratory hospital, these ventilators are a welcomed addition to the much-needed supplies that are required to equip the facility. We are very grateful that these gifts are being donated to us at a time when revenue is almost non-existent. Our mainstay revenue-generating activity, tourism, has diminished to an all-time low, while we continue to sustain our economy in spite of all these challenges. On that note, allow me to express once again our heartfelt gratitude to the India-UN Development Partnership Fund.
The India-UN Development Partnership Fund, through South-South Cooperation, has provided the 2 ventilators as part of a $1 million project for the island titled Human Security and Sustainable Development, a COVID-19 Response in St. Lucia. The United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, is the implementing agency. Miguel Trim, National Officer for St. Lucia under the Carry Secure project, represented the UNDP for the handover.
These activities are part of the UNDP COVID-19 recovery program for the Eastern Caribbean that is focused on promoting resilient health systems to respond to the pandemic, in addition to health procurement support, assessing and addressing the socio-economic impacts of COVID-19, and managing the crisis through a multi-sectoral response framework, including assistance for the reopening of the economy.
According to Trim, these activities also complement other ongoing collaborations between UNDP and the Government of St. Lucia in areas related to citizen security through the Carry Secure project and the environment through the Jeff Small Grants program. The ventilators are just the first delivery in a larger procurement effort for St. Lucia.
In the near future, we will see additional personal protective equipment, including gowns, face shields, face goggles, and hazmat suits, landing in St. Lucia to support national efforts to fight the second wave of COVID-19.
Included in the India-UN Development Partnership Fund through South-South Cooperation project for St. Lucia's response to COVID-19 is a World Food Program-supported cash transfer initiative to address the socio-economic impact of the pandemic on the most vulnerable households in St. Lucia and in expanding the public assistance program. These ventures are government-led. For the Government Information Service, I am Jessie Leonce reporting. And to round off with this morning's updates, before we get to our interview, we have a public service announcement on the temporary relocation of the Lac-Wamingo bus stop. The Ministry of Tourism wishes to advise the general public that as a result of the sidewalk works on Pena Street, there will be a temporary relocation of Route 3A, the Lac-Wamingo bus stop, to the old fire station site on Jeremy Street. The relocation is effective from October 6, 2020 for a period of 3 weeks. Vendors selling in the vicinity of the Lac-Wamingo bus stop will also be relocated to the old fire station site. Pedestrians are advised to use the entrance closer to the La Place Carénage to access the bus stop. The Ministry of Tourism regrets any inconvenience caused during this period. The general public are urged to adhere to the safety measures put in place for their protection. And for more information, you can contact the numbers 721-9678 or 722-6121. This initiative that's ongoing, that is the sidewalk works that are ongoing at Pena Street, is an initiative funded by the World Bank under the OECS Regional Tourism Competitiveness Project. Do stay with us. When we come back, we sit down with the Curriculum Officer for Technology Integration, Mr. Germain Anthony, and he's going to be speaking to us as we round off Suicide Prevention, Suicide Awareness Month for September. And speaking about our kids as they're being more and more exposed to technology, how are we protecting them from all of the threats associated? Stay with us.
What does coronavirus have in common with love? Both are highly contagious. Spread love, not the virus. Like you, COVID-19 loves a lime. Beach, river, or fed. Coronavirus is like these people who track every lime just to invade. The best way to put off invaders? Cancel the lime. Spread love, not the virus. Keep you and your crew corona-free. Live to lime another day.
Together let us win this war. Said we shall be a soldier. Together we can beat this corona.
When a hurricane is approaching, safety of life and the preservation of livelihoods is most important. We should take heed. Fishers, move boats and fishing vessels to higher grounds or safer holding spaces. Secure boats by tying them with rope and chains. Boats can also be secured by filling them with sand and sunk for protection against high winds. Collect all fishing pods and place on land in a secure holding area. Protect fishing nets by weighing them down and securing them where they will not be washed away by flood waters. Store all electronic and navigational equipment such as GPS and radios in a dry, safe place. Secure boat engines and spare parts. Avoid the spillage of oil and lubricants by storing your supply in an elevated, secure area. Evacuate low-lying coastal areas. Do not for any reason go out to sea if storm threatens, as the strength or wind speed could change unexpectedly. And keep monitoring the weather system by listening to official advisories from NEMO and the Met Services. Remember, this is the hurricane season, and we should be prepared. A message brought to you by the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, Physical Planning, Natural Resources, and Cooperatives.
She's been watching, waiting, wondering when the sands of time will give way to a tide of change, and for yesterday and today to become a new tomorrow. For a time when her sun can kiss the cheeks of your loved one, and her stars can twinkle in her honeymoon skies. When her earthly embrace will reassure and calm your soul. And her unique view can change your whole perspective. Proudly, she has risen to meet new challenges and to provide safe harbor to all who reach her shores. For her hopes and dreams still stand, shoulder to shoulder, a precious reminder of experiences yet to come. So, wherever your moments and memories take you, let her sense of adventure set you free. She is Saint Lucia. Let her inspire you.
Saint Lucie ka registre vers min corona ek I ka fait mouvement ek an chay vitesse tan chaque canef ka kouye pour vigilance publique là fait wolo parler en place publique qu'on bon en base ti boutique changer distance sociale 6 pieds Rodyon à l'autre. I ka travail tan, si ou senti ko pa cordial, quarantine ko, pas en contact et puis l'autre, en cas où te toi pe exposé. C'est un écouye, free one ou ben n'importe clinique yo pou. Les pays a dimi à clé, ça veut dire les supermarkets, pharmacies et puis ATM, yo accessible avant 7 heures. Pays à clé en plein, ça veut dire tout bagay fermé à 24 heures. Servi protocole comme sorti par bureau indication santé. Nous tout ensemble, ça sauve vermine corona. Si nous tous servi Jidla à toutes les.
Together let us win this war. Say we shall be a soldier. Together we can beat this corona.
In a world where germs are widespread, comes a group of superhero germ busters, the germaphores.
We spend most of our time fighting germs, every day of the week. After I play, I wash my hands. Before I eat, I wash my hands. After I play with my puppy, I wash my hands. I cover my sneezes with my forearm or elbow when I am in public. And I cover my cough to avoid spreading dangerous germs. We are the germaphores, germ-busting superheroes. You can be too. Always wash your hands and cover your sneeze and cough. Let's stop the spread of menacing germs.
We'll be back, germaphores, with more powerful germs.
And we will be waiting to prevent you from spreading.
Thank you so much for staying with us. Again, we're moving along with this morning's program very briskly because we do have some additional live programming for the morning. We hope you can stay tuned for. We've gone over the updates that we have had for you for today, and now we're on to our interview for this morning. We were supposed to have Miss Naomi Grandison sitting in with us this Wednesday, as we know Senate is tomorrow, so she would be coming today. Unfortunately, she's not able to be here with us, but her scheduled tag, Mr. Germain Anthony, is here in studio with us. He is the curriculum officer for technology integration at the Ministry of Education. A special good morning to you, sir. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. The line of conversation and the inspiration behind having you here to join Naomi originally was you speaking on the kids having an increased exposure to technology, especially in light of this COVID-19 situation. E-learning is more prominent now more than ever. And how do we protect our kids in terms of the time that they spend online, even their interactions, and especially as we're wrapping up with a Suicide Awareness Month, how do we protect our kids from things that may make them feel less than? So I would have loved to have Naomi here. Naomi, we're missing you. But in the absence of such, if you could just speak to us on you being a teacher as well, your background in teaching, speak on the level of exposure that kids are having to technology now. There are a lot of articles online that speak to it. So if you could just speak to us about the level of exposure that kids have right now to technology, how good is it? How bad is it? And where should parents and teachers be careful as to the extent of that exposure?
Sure. The internet is having a lot of influence on life as it is today. And of course, some good, some bad. Like anything else, the solution really lies in education, educating young people particularly to use the internet wisely. I would say first, we shouldn't adopt the approach that we need to try to shield or hide the internet or devices from young people. Instead, the approach has to be that we teach them, we prepare them to navigate the internet, in a way that's productive and in a way that they can protect themselves. Since Internet 2.0, where the common person, ordinary person, can actually upload and add content to the web, I mean, a plethora of issues have come up. Fake news, inaccurate information, and of course, predatory behavior. What the Ministry of Education is focusing on is getting the whole idea of internet safety into the curriculum, and in addition to that, making sure that the internet network at the schools have the necessary filters to try to prevent access to sites or content on the internet that could be harmful.
Okay. And even from the perspective of the amount of time that is spent on, we look at, we're seeing ads on social media now for blue light glasses and so on and so forth. Can you speak to parents, teachers being aware of and taking into consideration that the exposure and the time that is spent on these devices, it's not only the predatory aspect or the safety measures and software to protect them while they're on it, but also the physical space as well?
Yes, so as we've known for a long time, too much exposure or in fact spending too much time at a computer screen can be dangerous. It is still the same thing. You can suffer from eye strain, migraine headaches. Even your posture is important if you're going to be at a computer for any extended period of time. It doesn't matter whether you're at a desktop or laptop or mobile device in your hand. You have to be mindful of how much time you spend looking at a screen, especially if it is a small screen. That would have some impact on your vision after a long time. So there's advice where that is concerned. You try to limit the time that you spend on a computer looking at a screen, or even a television for that matter. You also want to make sure that the furniture that you're sitting at is ideal for using the computer. In the school, we advise teachers that they should not, especially for very young children, you do not give too much activity that is computer-oriented. So if you're looking at students, for example, who are at the early childhood stage or primary school students, you don't want to spend 80% of the time having them looking at some screen or projector, image on a whiteboard. That would obviously at some point become a danger to them. So those are some of the issues. And in addition to that, what we're noticing is whether you're using a computer for work or for play, being idle, or, well, I don't want to say idle, but being, inactive, seated for very long is an obvious danger to your health. It can lead to obesity. It can actually lead to other conditions like back pain. The body requires movement constantly for it to remain in shape. So if you're sitting at a computer or console gaming all day, or maybe you're doing some online learning and you're spending a lot of time seated, that can actually have an effect on your physiology.
Okay, wonderful. And we don't have much time, but I just want to touch on some of the work that your office has been doing. I was made to understand that earlier this week that government has efforts to advance the integration of technology in the classroom is being boosted by an initiative titled Pro Futuro Technology in Education Program. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that and how our kids will be benefiting?
Yes, so the Pro Futuro Digital Education Program is, at this stage, it's a pilot program, and it is funded in part by OAS and the Pro Futuro Foundation, which comes out of Spain. It is a program that was launched initially in Latin America and is now extended to the Caribbean. And we have 12 primary schools benefiting from that program. The program itself it involves digital content for students at the early primary age. It involves a lot of teacher training and coaching, some of which has moved online. And it also it involves equipment that has been donated to the schools in the form of tablets and the laptop server on which all the content resides. So that program is a really a full integration of all the different components you would expect from a digital or at a technology-enabled kind of initiative, where teachers are trained how to use the content, how to use the activities. The digital content is available, and the teachers are actually trained to do more than just use the content on the devices, but how to create their own content to add to the platform.
Okay, wonderful. And it's in a pilot phase right now?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. And overall, we've come upon a month of school, almost. If you could just give us a status update as to how the schools are faring in terms of their response to this mixed and blended learning experience.
What I can say is, based on my visits to the schools under the Pro Futuro program last week, and we see, for the most part, the principals have taken charge of the situation. The situation in each school is different. For example, you have schools where the population density is higher, some others where it's a bit more sparse. And we're seeing that teachers have really taken up a lot more responsibility. For example, during the intermission, during the breaks, they have to monitor how the students interact outside of the classroom now to maintain, some of the protocols, wearing of the masks and the social distancing. But in addition to that, a lot of the teachers, and I want to add even some of the principals we spoke with, were so thankful that some of their more senior teachers have now come aboard to the whole idea of online learning, and they themselves are learning, and so they're now able to augment what they're doing in the classroom because we now have reduced days, and so they're able to add additional content and activities, assessment activities online so that their students can have access to. So it really is, sometimes they say necessity is the mother of invention, and it is that kind of situation because where we were probably having difficulty getting our teachers to come aboard with some of the online methodologies and modalities, we're seeing that more teachers are willing to learn to do the training online and to actually implement these strategies.
Okay, wonderful. As we wrap up, any final words just coming from your office right now?
Well, I would say with respect to internet safety, we do have a Moodle course on the ministry's Moodle site. And that site, the course is in development. However, we're making available all the materials that is on the Moodle course to our teachers. And if you go to the Moodle course site, the Moodle course, the URL, I can't say it off the top of my head, but it's training.education.lc. And you will see, if you do a search, you would do a search for internet safety for schools, and that content is there, and there's actually a guest access to the course. And the password is simple, it's teacher@123. And parents can go on there, look at the content, teachers can go on there. The teachers can use that content to actually now use in their classroom now to teach the students. So we will be making that more of a big kind of launch when we have the actual design completed.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sitting in with us, Mr. Germain Anthony, the Curriculum Officer for Technology Integration at the Ministry of Education. Thank you so much for sitting in with us for this Wednesday on such short notice.
Thanks, Jesse. Pleasure.
Thanks. Oh, that's all the time we have for now. Thank you so much for watching The Morning Brew. We just delivered you the latest updates from the government of St. Lucia. Taking a look back at just yesterday, the parliamentary proceedings, the sitting of the House of Assembly. We just want to remind you that we will be having the sitting of the Senate tomorrow in Parliament from 10 a.m. We also here at the GIS will be following through with more comprehensive reports on the parliamentary proceedings so far, so do stay tuned for the government notebooks look over at the House of Assembly sitting yesterday. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Jessie Leon signing off for now. Do stay tuned for more live programming coming up on the NTN channel.